daughters have more talent and natural gifts than I ever had. I want to make sure that society allows them to fly as high as their wings will carry them. There should be no assumptions, no stereotypes, no limitations. I want them to know from the bottom of my heart that I never did and I never would intentionally disrespect a woman or treat any woman differently than I would want them treated. And that is the God's honest truth. Your dad made mistakes, and he apologized, and he learned from it. And that's what life is all about. And I know the political process is flawed, and I understand their cynicism and distrust and disappointment now. But don't give it up. Thank you for the honor of serving you. It has been the honor of my lifetime. God bless you.
Governor Cuomo has announced he is resigning from the governorship. He took this near the end of his remarks, so it caught a lot of people off guard. Of course, President Biden had recommended, after all of these allegations came to light from the Attorney General's report, that he should step down. Do we know, Edward, whether there were any updated conversation between the two?
Yeah, at this point, we don't know if there's any conversation between the two, but there was certainly public pressure. You heard all the way up to even this weekend, the president stressing that Cuomo should resign, sticking by those comments that he had said in the past. The White House press secretary also echoing that the president stands firm on what he believes, that if this report proved true, then therefore the governor should resign. The governor had no political friends basically at the end. You saw his closest advisors starting to resign there, so there was really no avenue for him. The White House, likely expected this. We are going to ask, get an updated status. The president, we do expect we will hear from him later this afternoon on this reconciliation bill. We'll probably get a comment related to this, too.
In 14 days, Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul will become New York State's first female governor. She just sent out a statement about Governor Cuomo's resignation, saying, "I agree with Governor Cuomo's decision. It's the right thing to do and in the best interest of New Yorkers." She says that she is prepared to lead as New York's 57th governor. And Alice Gaynor has been looking into Kathy Hochul. The spotlight, of course, is now on her. Alice?
Now, you may be wondering, who exactly is Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul? She has been out of the spotlight, quietly doing her job these past 2 terms, hitting the ground running. She has been all over the state, as Mary has mentioned. There are 62 counties here in New York. She's in every town. She's in every city. And people we've been speaking to, other lawmakers, say she has built up a lot of goodwill because of it. The job of Lieutenant Governor, it's largely ceremonial. She's been at ribbon cuttings. She has served as the governor's surrogate, doing radio interviews, things like that. But now she is well prepared to do the job, according to those who know her best.
New York Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul has spent much of the last nearly 7 years on the road, visiting each of the state's 62 counties yearly, mostly working in Governor Andrew Cuomo's shadow during her 2 terms in office. The 62-year-old was not present during his daily coronavirus briefings, was not mentioned in his pandemic memoir, and is not considered a part of his inner circle. Hochul's name was also not mentioned in the investigative report by State Attorney General Letitia James, which detailed efforts by Cuomo's staff to discredit some of his accusers. In a series of tweets last week, Hochul said in part she believed the women and that the AG's investigation has documented repulsive and unlawful behavior by the governor towards multiple women. But she stopped short of calling for his resignation because she's next in the line of succession. It would not be appropriate to comment further on the process at this moment. Her communications director posted these pictures last week as she rode the subway on her way to an event in Harlem, wearing a baseball cap that read, "Fight like a girl."
Even though jokes were made about this could be the next governor that we're addressing today, she was resolute and did not make any mention of anything. She was a consummate professional.
Queens Assemblywoman Alicia Heineman invited the lieutenant governor to speak at the event for the National Organization of Black Elected Legislative Women prior to the release of the AG's report. Outside of that event, Hochul has been canceling public appearances.
She was in Queens recently. A couple of my colleagues met with her. So she has definitely made an impression, I believe, across the state of New York.
A Buffalo native, Hochul served on the Hamburg Town Board and then as Erie County Clerk. She was elected to Congress, winning a 2011 special election, representing a conservative Western New York district. But she lost a bid for re-election a year later.
A little bit more information about Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul. She has a bachelor's degree from Syracuse University and a law degree from Catholic University. She left a career in law for public service. She's also spearheaded a number of initiatives geared toward women's issues. Ironically, she's actually spearheaded the campaign, Governor Cuomo's campaign, Enough is Enough, which is to combat sexual assault on college campuses. And another interesting point, she actually wasn't even Governor Cuomo's initial first choice for running mate. And here she is about to step into the role as governor, making history as the first female governor of New York. Jessica, Mary, Marcia.
All right. Thank you, Alice.
Alice, thank you so much. And we've been seeing the spotlight on Kathy Hochul. I wanted to mention, as we were talking about possible contenders in 2022, that Mayor de Blasio has tweeted out, to make no mistake, this is the result of survivors bravely telling their stories. It was past time for Andrew Cuomo to resign, and it's for the good of all New York. We're hearing from so many people right now in reaction to what has happened within the past hour, that Andrew Cuomo is stepping down, and Kathy Hochul in 14 days will become the next governor of New York. Many question, is she ready for this position? She has been in the political spotlight for many, many years, but when it comes to like a celebrity political spotlight, we haven't seen her. She was not in Cuomo's inner circle, and she was not part of the bombshell report by the AG. So we're talking about somebody who is stepping into this position in a very critical time for the state.
See, I think that the fact that she wasn't in the governor's inner circle is going to make it a lot easier for her to deal with the legislature. Remember, as the lieutenant governor, she was the person who presided over the Senate. So she does have relationships with members of the Senate, and she also has relationships with members of the Assembly, and I think they're going to look at her and try to help her as much as possible, because everybody wants to do the same thing, which is to bring New York State back from COVID.
Right.
Faster and better than ever before, and more than any state in the nation. The most effective green economy program in the nation. We did more for Black and Latino families than any other administration. We did more for working families. We did more for our union brothers and sisters. We did more to battle racism and anti-Semitism. Today, so much of the politics is just noise. Just static.
Listening there to New York Governor Andrew Cuomo with a big announcement that he is resigning after a state attorney general report released accused him of sexually harassing 11 women. Cuomo denies the allegations but says right now the best thing he can do for New York is step aside and let government continue to govern. Let's go to senior investigative reporter Aaron Katursky for more on this. Aaron, what do we know about what went into this decision and what the governor's movements have been since that report came out? Because this is the first time we're hearing from him live.
It's just a week after the New York Attorney General report, Diane, said that he had sexually harassed 11 women. He prepared a videotaped response that very day, but we hadn't seen him for the last week as he remained holed up in the executive mansion. But earlier this morning, the governor flew from Albany here to New York City so that he could make this announcement. He had come under intense pressure in recent days. Even steadfast Cuomo loyalists had urged him to resign, saying that his impeachment was going to be inevitable. And we heard the Assembly Judiciary Committee outline a whole process that could lead to the governor's impeachment as soon as next month. Governor Cuomo said his instinct is to fight because he said he believes the accusations against him are politically motivated, and he says he has not been given a fair chance to respond. And we heard his attorneys say that they can't possibly prepare a response by the Friday deadline that the Assembly gave him. And so he says now, rather than become a distraction and have government become a distraction, because, as Cuomo put it, he loves the people of this state, he said the best thing he can do now is step aside, and that resignation will take effect in 14 days.
And Ariel Reshef is following this for us in Albany as well. Ariel, the governor wasn't just facing these sexual harassment allegations, but also other allegations related to the pandemic, the management of nursing homes, the management of data in nursing homes, resources used for his book. And all of this was being investigated there in Albany. How does this progress now? Is that investigation now over?
Well, essentially, the investigation by the Assembly would be null and void. That's what the Judiciary Committee chairman said yesterday. If the governor were to resign, then it would render their proceedings essentially, as I said, null and void. But we have to remember that this is a governor that's also facing a possible criminal charge here in Albany stemming from his executive assistant's complaint against him that he allegedly groped her, something he firmly denied. I just was struck in his comments that there was this air of defiance mixed with a bit of contrition. You heard him adamantly deny any of those allegations of sexual misconduct, of harassment, but in the same breath apologized to his accusers, saying that he understands he had hurt them and had offended them. We also know that he touched on the fact that this is a polarized political environment and that he couldn't have possibly gotten a fair process here, something that has been echoed over the course of the last week by his attorneys. So this is certainly a bit of a whiplash moment, a bit of a bombshell announcement from Governor Cuomo that he will step aside. And as Aaron mentioned, that will be effective in 14 days from now. Diane.
And Aaron, we also heard from Cuomo's attorney before he got up and spoke, and she was taking aim at the report, saying the report was biased, that they omitted evidence that could have made him look better in that report, that the investigators themselves were biased, and that the victims who came forward, or alleged victims who came forward, may have misinterpreted things. What happens now? Because what we heard from his attorney sounds like they are gearing up for a legal battle here.
Defense Attorney Rita Glavin was the preamble to Governor Cuomo's resignation, and it was almost as if he wanted her to set up that he was somehow forced out because of the circumstances, because the report is political, because the process was unfair, because the women misinterpreted what he considered to be normal behavior. But the governor also did acknowledge that he made women feel uncomfortable, and he addressed for the first time the allegation involving a state trooper on his personal security detail. And though he denied or said he didn't remember touching her back or her stomach as alleged, he apologized to her and her family, saying that women should be believed. And he said it was a mistake, plain and simple. But it's still possible that the Assembly Judiciary Committee moves forward with its impeachment investigation. And although the consequence, the Judiciary Chairman Charles Levine said, would be moot in terms of removal from office, there is still a mechanism the Assembly could undertake so that Andrew Cuomo can no longer hold elective office in this state.
And Aaron, in terms of what happens now in New York, with the governor stepping aside, he said the lieutenant governor will take over. How do things move forward from there?
Kathy Hochul is the lieutenant governor. She is from Western New York. She lives in Buffalo. She's been a long-time political hand. Her husband was the U.S. attorney in the Western District of New York in Buffalo and Rochester. So she is a known quantity in certain parts of the state. But the rest of the state is going to be able to get to know her now as she takes on the governor's duties. And for Kathy Hochul, we know she has spent the last several weeks consulting with aides and allies to see how she is going to be able to step in and manage the state. Remember, we all came to know Governor Cuomo through his pandemic briefings and his, what he said was straight talk about the facts. It was his personal delivery of all of the messages that consume New York politics right now. And so the lieutenant governor is going to have to figure out how to step in to those very large shoes in terms of public profile, or decide whether she wants others to take on a more prominent role.
Our senior investigative reporter Aaron Katersky and ABC's Ariel Reshef in Albany.
Right now, CBS 2 reporter Natalie Duddridge, she's standing by with reaction from folks as they learn the news that Governor Cuomo, in 14 days, he will be resigning. Natalie.
Well, yes, as this announcement was being made, people here in Lower Manhattan all paying attention. People had their devices out. They had their phones in hand. They had their headphones on, all collectively listening and watching. Here's some reaction from New Yorkers.
I think he did the right thing by resigning, because it became very clear that he had no support in the state of New York based on those allegations. He's avoided dealing with the specific issues of harassment. I think it's better off for the state of New York.
Who's to say what comes next? But I think that that's the right move. I think that that's what New York needs in order to step forward and move forward with everything else that's going on. The last thing we need is to worry and busy ourselves with, is this man apt to lead?
The heat was getting pretty rough, so he was going to wind up going anyway.
I didn't expect that he was going to do it. I thought that he was going to fight it out until the end in an impeachment trial. But I guess he opted to just end it here because he saw that the writing was on the wall. So it was coming after the AG's report. I guess you could say there was a lot of good that he did as the governor, but I guess with this scandal, it just made it impossible for him to govern. So I guess he had no choice.
And as you heard, a variety of opinions, thoughts, reactions, everyone still processing the news. But the common theme here seems to be no one was really that surprised. In Lower Manhattan, Natalie Dudridge, CBS 2 News.
This is the first time we've heard the governor address specifically the allegations made against him in that independent report released by the Attorney General's office as it pertained to Trooper Number 1. Now, this is a member of his protective detail who she says was the subject of, sexual harassment, and claims in statements made by the governor about her attire, about her dress, about the idea that she's going to be married and that will result in a reduction in her sex drive, according to the report. On top of that, she also says that he touched her inappropriately at times. Andrea, today the governor addressed it and made several statements that I want to fact check, as you said. The first off, that he was upset about the lack of diversity in the Protective Services Unit of the state police. That's his security detail. And so as a result, he wanted a woman on board, an additional woman on board his protective detail. That's belied by the facts in the report. According to the report, it says the senior investigator for the New York State Police, and just to give people an idea of the role of the senior investigator in the state police, it's really the person who kind of makes things happen day to day. That's an important job. So while they may not have the title of a captain or a lieutenant, they're key people within the state police. The senior investigator immediately after this Trooper Number 1 met Governor Cuomo, along with another female trooper, sent an email to Trooper Number 1 saying, "What did you say to him? 7 question marks," and made a comment that the governor wanted her on the detail tomorrow. That's a quote. On top of that, they changed the regulations for this trooper to join. She had not yet had enough years on the job in order to be a part of the Protective Services Unit. They bent the regulations for that. There were direct requests made from the executive chamber, according to the report. And I just want to read something from the report specifically. I just beg your indulgence here, Andrea, because I want to pull it up. Basically, they found, the independent investigators, that the governor was not truthful in his statements that this was just purely a diverse hiring initiative. They found that the contemporaneous emails sent by that senior investigator, as well as testimony from that senior investigator, indicated to them that this was all an attempt to get this specific state trooper added to his detail. The governor did not address statements that he made about her attire. He made statements that she should perhaps be wearing a dress or should be wearing more vibrant colors. Andrea, the purpose of somebody on the protective detail is to look out for the governor's safety. They are armed. It is difficult. You know, this is not the swanky bar in a James Bond film. You cannot hide a gun easily wearing a dress. So I don't understand why the governor would be making those comments. That's something, obviously, that Trooper Number 1 took issue with and stated to investigators. That was information that was also corroborated in that report. So an important fact check there as it pertains to Trooper Number 1. You know, this whole incident here, Andrea, has been kind of cast as a bias report. Knowing one of the investigators personally, Andrea, I just have never seen that person engage in any sort of bias along these lines. So just a couple of different things that I'll raise there.